Welcome to Lesson 16.10 on Adapting Skills Globally. This lesson addresses how to apply the grant development skills you have learned throughout this course in international contexts. While core principles of effective proposal development transfer across borders, significant adaptations are required when working with international funders or partners. Currency conversion, international partnership dynamics, cultural differences in communication styles, and varying regulatory environments all require attention. Organizations increasingly work across borders, whether pursuing international funding, partnering with organizations in other countries, or implementing programs globally. The ability to adapt your skills to these contexts expands your impact and opportunities. By the end of this lesson, you will understand key adaptations required for international grant work and practical strategies for navigating cross-cultural collaboration effectively. Before focusing on adaptations, recognize that many core skills you have developed transfer directly to international contexts. Clear, compelling writing that communicates persuasively translates across contexts. While specific formatting and emphases may vary, the fundamental craft of writing that engages reviewers and conveys your message applies universally. Logical program design principles are universal. Sound needs assessment, clear objectives, evidence-based activities, and measurable outcomes matter to funders everywhere. These foundations of strong program design do not change with geography. Strong evaluation approaches apply globally. Funders around the world want to know whether programs achieve their intended outcomes. The evaluation concepts and methods you have learned serve you in any funding context. Relationship building matters everywhere, though specific practices vary. Funders globally value partners they trust. Investing in relationships with program officers, partners, and stakeholders produces returns regardless of location. Ethical practices are foundational in any context. Integrity, transparency, and responsible use of resources matter to funders and communities worldwide. Your ethical foundation travels with you. International grant work introduces currency considerations that domestic funding does not require. Understanding these issues helps you develop sound international budgets. International budgets require decisions about which currency or currencies to use. You may incur costs in multiple currencies, receive funding in yet another, and need to report in another still. Currency choices affect both proposal development and financial management. Exchange rate fluctuations create financial risk when costs and funding are in different currencies. A budget that balances perfectly when proposed may be insufficient or excessive when implemented if exchange rates move significantly. Some funders require budgets in specific currencies. European funders often require euros, UK funders may require pounds sterling, UN agencies often use US dollars. Matching funder requirements while accurately representing costs requires careful conversion. Multi-currency accounting adds complexity to financial management. Your accounting systems must track funds in multiple currencies, handle conversions, and produce reports that satisfy various funder requirements. Building contingency for exchange rate movement protects against adverse currency movements. Some funders allow explicit currency contingency. Others expect you to build buffers into line items, understand funder policies, and protect yourself appropriately. International partnerships introduce dynamics that differ from domestic collaborations, requiring attention and adaptation. Cross-border partnerships require clear agreements addressing roles, responsibilities, and expectations. Consortium agreements, memoranda of understanding, and subcontracts should address issues that might otherwise create misunderstanding. Power dynamics between organizations vary globally. Historical relationships between countries, organizational sizes, and funding flows all affect partnership dynamics. Be aware of how these dynamics might affect collaboration and work to create equitable partnerships. Communication across time zones requires intentional planning. When partners span many hours of time difference, synchronous communication becomes challenging. Establish communication protocols that work for all partners. Different legal and regulatory frameworks apply in each country. Employment law, data protection regulations, tax requirements, and non-profit regulations all vary. Ensure you understand applicable frameworks and structure partnerships appropriately. Trust building may require more time internationally. Cultural differences, distance, and unfamiliarity can slow relationship development. Invest in face-to-face meetings when possible and allow adequate time for partnerships to develop before major commitments. Cultural differences significantly affect how we communicate and collaborate. Understanding key cultural dimensions helps navigate international work. Direct versus indirect communication styles vary across cultures. Some cultures value straightforward, explicit communication, while others communicate more indirectly, expecting listeners to understand context and implication. Mismatches can cause misunderstanding. High context cultures rely heavily on shared understanding and contextual cues. Low context cultures depend more on explicit verbal communication. Messages that work in one context may fail in another. Relationship orientation versus task orientation affects how people prioritize. Some cultures emphasize building relationships before conducting business. Others focus primarily on completing tasks efficiently. Adapting your approach to partner expectations improves collaboration. Attitudes toward hierarchy and authority vary significantly. Some cultures expect deference to senior figures and formal decision-making channels. Others are more egalitarian. Understanding these expectations helps you engage appropriately. Comfort with uncertainty and ambiguity differs across cultures. Some embrace flexibility and improvisation. Others prefer detailed planning and clear procedures. Align your approach with partner and funder expectations. Proposal writing style expectations vary across international funders, requiring adaptation of your approach. Writing style expectations vary by funder region. American proposals often value direct, action-oriented language. European proposals may expect more formal, measured presentation. Asian contexts may value different emphases still. Observe and adapt. Level of formality differs across contexts. Some funders expect highly formal academic presentation. Others prefer accessible conversational styles. Match your tone to funder expectations and cultural context. Evidence expectations vary globally. American funders often emphasize quantitative evidence and rigorous evaluation. European funders may give more weight to participatory approaches and qualitative insight. Understand what evidence types your target funder values. Visual presentation preferences differ across regions and funders. Some value extensive graphics and visual communication. Others prefer text-heavy presentation. Review successful proposals and funder guidance to understand expectations. Length and detail expectations vary significantly. Some funders want comprehensive, detailed proposals. Others value conciseness. Page limits and formatting requirements differ. Adapt your approach to match expectations. Effective collaboration with international partners requires intentional practices that account for distance and difference. Establishing clear communication protocols early prevents misunderstandings. Agree on how often you will communicate, through what channels, and how decisions will be made. Document these agreements for reference. Documenting decisions and agreements in writing protects against misunderstanding and provides reference when questions arise. What seems clear in conversation may be remembered differently later. Written records create shared understanding. Being patient with different working styles recognizes that partners may operate differently than you expect. Response times, meeting cultures, and work rhythms vary. Patience and flexibility support productive collaboration. Investing in relationship building intentionally recognizes that international partnerships benefit from deliberate cultivation. Schedule informal interactions, learn about partners' contexts, and create opportunities for personal connection despite distance. Addressing conflicts promptly and respectfully prevents small issues from growing into partnership-threatening problems. Cultural differences can amplify misunderstandings. Address issues directly but with cultural sensitivity, seeking to understand before judging. International work often triggers compliance requirements in multiple jurisdictions, creating complexity that requires careful navigation. Multiple regulatory frameworks may apply when you work across borders. Your home country's regulations apply to your organization. Partner countries' regulations apply to activities there. Funder requirements add another layer. Mapping applicable requirements prevents compliance failures. Data protection requirements vary by country and can conflict. GDPR in Europe, various national laws, and sector-specific regulations create a complex landscape. Ensure data handling complies with all applicable requirements. Employment and contractor rules differ significantly across countries. What constitutes employment versus contracting, required benefits, and termination procedures all vary. Missteps can create legal liability. Tax implications of international funding require expert guidance. Withholding requirements, tax treaty provisions, and reporting obligations differ. Professional tax advice prevents expensive mistakes. Anti-corruption requirements apply globally. U.S. organizations are subject to the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. UK organizations face the UK Bribery Act. Funder requirements add additional obligations. Robust anti-corruption practices are essential. Language considerations significantly affect international grant work, from proposal development to implementation. English is common in international funding but not universal. Many European funders accept or require proposals in other languages. Working in non-English contexts requires appropriate language capacity. Translation quality matters significantly for proposals, agreements, and program materials. Poor translation can misrepresent your intentions, confuse partners, or undermine your credibility. Invest in quality translation for important documents. Technical terminology may not translate directly across languages. Grant-specific terms, programmatic language, and field-specific vocabulary may have no direct equivalent. Work with translators who understand your field. Consider language in partnership formation. Partners who share a common working language collaborate more smoothly. When partners work across languages, establish clear protocols for communication and documentation. Budget for professional translation when needed. AI translation tools can assist with informal communication, but important documents, including proposals and contracts, may require professional human translation. Include translation costs in your budget. Building credibility with international funders requires demonstrating that you can operate effectively across borders. Demonstrating relevant international experience shows funders you can deliver in global contexts. Highlight previous international work, relevant expertise, and lessons learned. Even limited international experience presented well builds credibility. Highlighting partnerships with local organizations signals that you understand the importance of local knowledge and relationships. International funders value approaches that center local partners rather than imposing external solutions. Showing understanding of local context demonstrates that your proposal reflects genuine knowledge rather than generic assumptions. Reference specific conditions, stakeholders, and dynamics in your target geography. Presenting culturally appropriate examples indicates awareness of how your work relates to specific contexts. Examples that resonate locally strengthen proposals more than generic illustrations. Referencing internationally recognized standards positions your work within global frameworks. Sustainable development goals, international conventions, and globally accepted methodologies provide common reference points that international funders recognize. Distance and time zone differences create practical challenges that require intentional management. Scheduling meetings that work across time zones requires creativity and fairness. Rotate meeting times so the same partners do not always bear inconvenient hours. Use scheduling tools that display multiple time zones clearly. Using asynchronous communication effectively reduces pressure for synchronous meetings. Detailed written updates, recorded presentations, and collaborative documents allow partners to contribute on their own schedules. Develop protocols that work for your partnership. Planning for travel time in project schedules recognizes that international work often requires in-person meetings that involve significant travel. Build adequate travel time into work plans and budgets. Building relationships despite physical distance requires intentional effort. Regular communication, personal check-ins, and virtual social interactions help maintain connection. Relationships suffer when communication becomes purely transactional. Leveraging technology for virtual collaboration enables effective teamwork across distance. Video conferencing, shared document platforms, project management tools, and communication applications support international partnerships when used effectively. International work carries risks that require proactive management strategies. Political and economic instability in implementation countries can affect operations. Government changes, economic crises, and civil unrest may disrupt activities. Monitor conditions and develop contingency plans for volatile contexts. Security considerations require attention when working in challenging environments. Staff safety, asset protection, and operational security may require specialized planning. Some contexts require professional security support. Exchange rate risk can affect budgets significantly over multi-year projects. Currency movements that seem unlikely when proposals are developed sometimes occur. Protect against adverse movements through contingencies or hedging where appropriate. Partner reliability may be harder to assess when partners are distant and unfamiliar. Due diligence on international partners requires extra effort. Start with smaller collaborations to test partnerships before major commitments. Building contingencies and mitigation strategies into proposals demonstrates to funders that you understand international risks and can manage them. Risk awareness strengthens rather than weakens proposals when paired with credible mitigation approaches. International experience provides valuable learning opportunities that strengthen future work when captured effectively. Documenting lessons from international work systematically creates organizational knowledge. After action reviews, project documentation, and reflection practices capture what you learned. Without documentation, learning remains individual rather than organizational. Building organizational knowledge over time creates competitive advantage. Organizations that accumulate international experience and apply its lessons develop capabilities that less experienced competitors lack. Sharing learning within your organization spreads benefits beyond those directly involved. Internal presentations, written summaries, and mentoring relationships transfer knowledge to colleagues who can apply it. Adapting approaches based on experience demonstrates organizational learning. Each international engagement should inform how you approach subsequent opportunities. Static approaches miss improvement opportunities. Developing staff expertise through international exposure builds capacity for future work. Providing international opportunities to emerging staff develops the next generation of global practitioners. Succession planning should include international experience development. Multiple resources support organizations adapting skills for global contexts. Cultural intelligence training and resources help develop cross-cultural competence. Training programs, books, and online resources address cultural awareness and adaptation skills. Investment in cultural learning pays dividends. International funding databases and guides provide information about global opportunities. Services like DVEX, Foundation Center, and funder-specific resources help navigate the international landscape. Professional associations with global membership connect you to international colleagues. Disciplinary associations often have international chapters or conferences that facilitate networking across borders. Experienced consultants and advisors who specialize in international funding can provide guidance tailored to your situation. Expert support accelerates learning and helps avoid common mistakes. Partner organizations with international expertise can both collaborate on opportunities and share knowledge. Relationships with experienced international organizations provide learning alongside practical partnership benefits. Investing in these resources positions your organization for international success. The global funding landscape offers significant opportunities for organizations willing to develop relevant capabilities. Today's lesson explored adapting grant development skills for international contexts. We established that core grant skills transfer across international contexts. Clear writing, logical program design, strong evaluation, relationship building, and ethical practice apply everywhere. These foundations serve you in any funding environment. Currency, partnerships, and culture require significant adaptation. International budgeting introduces currency complexity. Cross-border partnerships require clear agreements and cultural sensitivity. Communication and proposal styles vary across regions. Compliance complexity increases with international work. Multiple regulatory frameworks, varying data protection requirements, employment rules, and tax implications require careful navigation. Expert guidance helps manage this complexity. Building international credibility takes time and investment. Demonstrating relevant experience, highlighting local partnerships, and showing contextual understanding all contribute. Organizations should approach international funding as a long-term strategic investment. In our final lesson, we synthesize Week 16's themes, integrating data privacy, AI policy, and international funding considerations into a comprehensive framework for responsible global grant practice. Thank you for engaging with these concepts about adapting skills for international contexts.